The photograph slid out from behind a stack of retired name badges the clinic manager asked me to sort for the anniversary display case, and I nearly laughed at how ordinary it looked at first glance, before I actually looked. 14 years. 14 years since anyone had called me by the name printed crooked on that laminated card, back when I was a pharmacy student doing my rotation at Whitcombe Teaching Hospital, standing behind the counter in a lab coat 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled to keep them out of the mortar and pestle. In the photograph, I'm counting pills into a bottle, head bent, completely unaware anyone was pointing a camera at me. And leaning against the doorframe behind me, arms crossed, watching me work with an expression I hadn't let myself think about in over a decade, was Marcus Webb. I sat down right there on the break room floor, badges scattered around me like confetti nobody wanted, and let myself remember. Marcus was a resident then, 3 years ahead of me in the food chain, which in a teaching hospital might as well have been a different species. He used to come down to the pharmacy window with orders that didn't need clarifying, just to ask questions that did. Which antibiotic plays nicer with a patient's other medications, and could I walk him through why? I knew, even at 24, that he already understood the answer. He just liked hearing me explain things. I liked being asked. We never called it anything. That was the problem, looking back. We had 4 months of hallway conversations that ran too long, of him saving me the last cup of the good coffee in the residence lounge because I'd mentioned once, exactly once, that I hated the break room brand. 4 months of him walking the long way to radiology, so it took him past my window. And then his rotation ended. Mine ended a few weeks after, and neither of us had said the thing that would have made any of it matter once we were both gone. I heard, second-hand, through a classmate, that he'd matched into a residency across the country. I told myself that was that. You don't chase a maybe 3,000 miles. You especially don't chase it when you're 24, and terrified that the version of yourself who got left behind will always suspect she imagined the whole thing. I built a life instead. Good one, mostly. I finished my degree, took a job at an independent pharmacy 2 towns over from where I grew up, the kind of place where you learn the names of everyone's grandchildren and which ones are allergic to sulfur drugs. I dated a paramedic for 2 years who was kind and steady and ultimately not it, whatever it was. I stopped thinking about Marcus Webb on purpose, most days, which is a different thing entirely from not thinking about him. Here's the part I still turn over some nights. The part I think anyone who's ever let a good thing slip past them out of pride or fear or bad timing might recognize. Did I actually lose something real? Or did I spend 14 years mourning 4 months that only felt enormous because they ended before they could turn ordinary? You can talk yourself into believing either version, depending on the day. The photograph came home with me anyway, propped against the lamp on my nightstand for a solid week, until my sister saw it during a video call and asked who the guy in the doorway was. I told her. She got quiet, then said the kind of thing sisters say when they've heard a name enough times over the years without ever meeting the face attached to it. Look him up. What's the worst that happens? The worst that happens is I find out he's married with 3 kids and a golden retriever, and I have to live with having looked. I told her that. She said the worst is spending another 14 years wondering. I didn't have a good comeback for that one. I typed his name into a search bar 3 separate times before I let myself hit enter on the 4th. And there he was. Not 3,000 miles away anymore. 40 minutes away, at Ridgeline Medical, running the outpatient clinic there, apparently according to a staff directory photo that made him look older in the exact way that made my chest go tight instead of relieved. No wedding ring visible in the little thumbnail, which meant nothing and meant everything, the way small evidence always does when you want it to. I didn't email him. Emailing felt like something you do when you're prepared for a paper trail of disappointment. Instead, I did something almost as ridiculous, which was find out that Ridgeline was hosting a continuing education seminar on medication management the following month, open to outside pharmacy staff who wanted the credit hours, and I registered before I could talk myself out of it. I told myself it was about the credit hours. Nobody in my life believed that for 1 second, including me. The seminar room held maybe 60 people, folding chairs, a podium, the particular hum of fluorescent lighting that every medical building in America seems required by law to install. I got there early and sat near the back because some part of me was still 24 and not ready to be seen first. He walked in 12 minutes later with a stack of handouts under one arm, laughing at something a colleague said, and my whole body remembered him before my mind finished catching up. He looked older, obviously. Greyer at the temples, a little more weight behind his shoulders, the kind that comes from years of standing over exam tables instead of running the halls. But he still had that habit, the one I'd apparently kept in storage all this time, of tucking his pen behind his ear when he wasn't using it and forgetting it was there. He didn't see me until the break. When I was pouring coffee, I didn't actually want just to have something to do with my hands, and he stopped 3 feet away like he'd walked into glass. "You still hate the break room coffee," he said, which was not hello, was not my name, was somehow exactly right. I told him some things don't change in 14 years. He said some things do, though, and looked at me in a way that made it clear he wasn't talking about coffee anymore. We talked through the rest of the break, standing by the window, and then, unbelievably, through the entire second half of the seminar, ignoring the slides completely, trading the condensed version of 14 years like we were racing a clock neither of us had set. He wasn't married, had been, briefly, in his early 30s, and it hadn't worked, which he said plainly and without performing sadness about it, the way people do when they've actually made peace with something instead of just packaging it nicely. No kids. A dog, actually, which made me laugh out loud in the middle of a room full of people taking notes on drug interactions. He asked, eventually, the question I'd been waiting for and dreading in equal measure. "Why didn't you ever write, back then? I could have found you." I told him the truth, which was that I'd been so certain the 4 months had meant more to me than to him that reaching out felt like handing someone a bill for something they never agreed to buy. He was quiet for a second, and then he said he'd assumed the exact same thing about me, which is possibly the saddest, most human sentence I've ever heard out loud. 2 people, both certain they were the only one keeping score. I keep coming back to that, honestly. How much of what we call fate is just 2 scared people finally running out of pride at the same time, in the same room, 14 years too late to be efficient about it, and exactly on time to matter anyway? I don't know that there's a clean answer. I'm not sure I'd trust one if there were. We got coffee after, real coffee, not the seminar kind, and he walked me to my car afterward the way he used to walk the long route to radiology, taking the scenic path toward a goodbye neither of us wanted to actually say. He asked if he could call me. I said he'd better, since I wasn't waiting another 14 years for either of us to work up the nerve twice. The photograph sits framed on my kitchen counter now, next to a newer one Marcus took last month at the lake, the 2 of us squinting into the sun, older, unglamorous, entirely real. I look at them side by side, some mornings while the coffee brews, the girl in the lab coat and the woman I turned into, and I think about how close I came to boxing that first picture up with the badges and never looking twice. One glance, one afternoon of sorting somebody else's junk pile, and 14 years folded themselves shut like they'd never been open at all. I still don't know if that makes us lucky or just late. Maybe it's both. Maybe those are the same thing, depending on how the light hits the photograph the day you finally stop and look.